encouraged by the cold weather shelter and outreach plan that we have put together for this season. The plans means many different things to different people experiencing homelessness. I will stop and say here that while we are addressing this today, because it's cold out and it's getting colder, this is an issue that we work on 365 days a year. I recognize that most of the interest in the subject comes when it gets cold, but it's important to recognize that this is a year-round effort. It's night shelters and day shelters with case management. It's warm meals. It's safe and welcoming place to take a shower and sleep, and potentially life-saving resources like warming buses and transportation. So beginning on December the 1st, we will offer continuous access to shelter through the end of February. That's 91 days of shelters open and available to those who need without any temperature restrictions. On any given night, we are providing 799 and 932 emergency beds, between 799 and 932 emergency beds, which is above and beyond the 371 transitional beds which are supported year-round. But we also know that it gets cold before December the 1st. Just like tonight, on my phone, as many of you probably did, you got an advisory, a freeze advisory for this evening. So that is why tonight, October 30th, we'll have shelters activated and available because the temperature is forecast to hit 32 degrees. This same temperature threshold, 32 degrees, will be our guide for opening shelters for the rest of this month, all of November. So one more day in October, all of November, and then also in the month of March. It's important to mention this because the city's previous temperature guide had been 20 degrees without precipitation and 25 degrees with precipitation. So now we're going to just a flat 32 degrees. So we've raised the bar for when the shelters are open so that we can provide help for more people, for more women, more children, and for those who are in need. Additionally, I want to point out that again, the warming buses will be available for those who need to get to shelter. At the intersection of 13th and Chestnut, which is just one block from here, it will take people to shelters. It will be, the warming buses will be available from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., and that's when the shelters will be activated. We also intend to make Metro passes available for free to those who might need help with transportation getting to and from shelter. And this year, this new year, DHS, Department of Human Services, earmarked $500,000 in funds to fund an additional 186 overflow beds and to purchase supplies. This is significant because this is on top of the 930 emergency beds that we support year-round. We continue to support more than 1,400 individuals and their families who were once chronically homeless but now remain housed today. So those are fewer individuals that are in need of our services on and from the street. I do want to recognize again Irene Augustin, who's here today with us. She's the director of the city's Department of Human Services, as I said earlier, and she and her team and the continuum of care representatives from the service agencies work on this year-round, literally year-round. So along with our many community-based partners, nonprofits, and volunteers, including St. Louis Winter Outreach and Middle House, we work on this year-round. It's been a year-long planning process. We've come a long way in a short amount of time because we care about providing the services for the people who need it the most, for the people who are the most vulnerable in our city. It's important to support these populations all year long, as I've said a couple of times now, not just during the winter. So we ask people, please remember, if you see someone or you know of someone who needs help, who needs shelter, the number to call is still 211, and that is, we'll connect it to the city's continuum of care and other emergency services. We struggle to meet this need all year long, and our goal, of course, is the Housing First model. What we'd like to be able to do is get people into permanent housing so that they don't need to be on the street. And with that, I'll take questions.
Mayor, are you going to reopen the day shelter at Biddle House? That's the first question. The second question, are you going to allow Reverend Larry Rice to reopen New Life Evangelistic Center?
The day shelter at Biddle House is open for those people who have beds at Biddle House. Biddle House also will have an additional 50 beds for emergency shelter. So for those people, the Biddle House will continue to be open. With regard to Larry Rice, we do not see the property on Locust being reopened, and in fact, he has not even requested that it be open overnight. We don't see that happening.
On the Biddle House question, they used to have like 200 people a day who would be able to walk in off the street, and they'd be able to stay from 6 a.m. to like 6 p.m. Women, the disabled, and all kinds of folks be able to walk in. Are you going to reinstitute that again?
What we're doing is we are sharing that that demand across additional shelters. So Biddle House will have a capacity for 150.
Just to clarify, these permanent, semi-permanent beds are from December 1st through February 28th. Where are they going to be located? Where in the city will people be taken if they need these non-temperature dependent beds?
So I'll let Irene address it directly, but they are the 12 shelters that we support year-round, and there are 3 additional locations we have a new program this year where you may know we invited folks to apply for temporary shelter, I guess would be the way to explain it. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Irene?
So the City of St. Louis, we support year-round shelters. The goal is to make sure that we're at 100% utilization of that, meaning that we're going to fill every single bed within our regular bed shelters. We did support through money that we earmarked from our general use tax, about $500,000 to open additional beds. And so, you know, it's a highly coordinated effort, not only with the continuum of care, but with our partners with St. Louis with Winter Outreach. We want to ensure that everyone has a bed and are safe. And so, you know, the goal is get our regular beds filled first, then our overflow beds, and then we're going to take it even a step further and work with our COC partners for case management, because the goal is to reduce their time homeless and get them into housing. And so that, you know, aside from the triage, the other evolution of this and what we've been working on is really that connection to housing. So that's really what the plan is. It's the plan that we're working on year round. So we have a reduction so that, you know, we can hopefully one day reinvest these dollars into other opportunities for folks. But during the winter months, it's to keep them safe. We don't want people dying on the street. And so that's why the City of St. Louis has put money towards this. But I also want to say that, you know, as we work towards making sure people are safe, we also have to pay attention to the inflow of where people are coming from. And so my hope is that our regional partners and their plans during the winter time, that they're taking that into account. I know we get a bulk of the press around this, but you know, every county has their continuum of care too. They're supposed to have a coordinated entry process as well. We make sure we talk to them and discuss these issues with them. I'm very proud of the City of St. Louis in terms of the support we're given. I hope other government entities are giving their continuum of cares the same support as well.
You know,
so bottom line, starting December 1st, how many additional beds will be available for individuals who are experiencing homelessness above those 12 shelters that are already part of it?
186.
Okay.
You know, oftentimes, especially on cold nights like we're expecting tonight and tomorrow, sometimes it's tough to get homeless people into these shelters, you know, to move away from the parks, to move away from bus stops. What are you guys going to do to try to avoid that?
Let's talk about our outreach efforts, and
Sure.
we're always trying to get people into shelter.
outreach happens on various levels. There are professional outreach teams that are working with people every single day. We make sure that they have the message. We also have very passionate community members that go out and make sure people are okay. We communicate with them. We've been doing monthly meetings, and now we're going to step those up to weekly meetings. At one point, very, very soon, the Biddle House beds will transition to our most vulnerable individuals. We work with the community volunteers, professional outreach, to make sure that those individuals get into shelter. And the decision to get them into the 50 vulnerable beds is that they're medically frail, that they're chronic, that they're, from our outreach teams and their professional opinion, that if they're on the street, they're gonna die on the street if we don't get them off.
How does this administration, first of all, first question, so you're adamantly against New Life reopening, even though we have situations where a number of homeless are sleeping out on the streets while we have a homeless shelter closed. Is that fair, Mayor? It's happened the last 2 winters. You have people sleeping out in 0-degree weather on sidewalks and doorways while you have a building that was a homeless shelter for 50 years that shut down. And
Well-
you won't let that building reopen?
Well, as you know, there were a number of issues with regard to that, with regard to permitting, with regard to life safety issues within the building. Last year, we did not fill all of the beds that were available. We have to fill the beds that are available, and that means encouraging people to go into shelter and to be in off the streets. So we believe that we have capacity, particularly between our regular shelters, our overflow shelters, the winter outreach shelters, which are scattered around the city. We believe that we have the capacity, and those shelters are much better for the folks. So we have to be able to get folks into shelter.
Last winter, they ran out of shelter space.
Well, that actually is not, there were beds available. So when you say they ran out of shelter space, it is a matter of being able to get folks to where there are beds available. City of St. Louis, with our federal partners, spends $17 million a year. St. Louis County spends about $3 or $3.5 million a year. We serve people from the region because we care about people, not because we care about where their last address was. But we could really use some additional assistance from our neighboring counties.
We have a couple more minutes. Any other reporters
so-
have questions? Rachel, let's let Rachel
As
go.
far as the city is aware, is the city's homeless issue, is it getting worse? Is it staying the same or getting better?
We think it is staying the same and getting a little bit better, but we are certainly working every day on that, and part of it is trying to prevent people from becoming homeless. Prevention is a very important aspect of this as well, and so we work with people to prevent them from becoming. And of course, what we all see that is so concerning to us is people that are homeless who we can't get into shelter. We
Mayor,
can't
on the-
persuade
excuse
them
me.
to go into shelter.
Mayor on the board of Freehold.
Mark, before we switch topics, I want to make sure every reporter has a chance to talk about.
Mayor, how do you see?
Elliot, let's let Emily
Okay.
go.
I have an off-topic question as well.
Okay, are we done on cold shelter?
No.
Because the mayor's open to taking a couple more questions. Mark,
I
can we
just
talk
want
about
one,
free-
can I ask
One more question,
One
Elliot.
more question for me. How can you say it's getting better when the day shelter that served 200 people a day is shut down at Biddle House, and the New Life Evangelistic Center, they have 200 to 300 beds,
Well,
is shut down? How
because
can you
we've
say
gotten,
it's getting better?
we've gotten 1,400 people into permanent housing. Getting better means getting people into permanent housing. It doesn't mean, and it means preventing people from becoming homeless. So that's what I,
And I want to interject too. From 2017 to now, we've seen about a 22% reduction in homelessness. And that has to do because we instituted as a community coordinated entry, meaning that we're breaking down silos, that we're creating processes to get people connected to housing as quickly as possible. And so, we do also have a very hard to serve population in our community. These are people that have untreated, undiagnosed behavioral health issues, maybe mental health issues. And it's important to point out, while we want our government partners to be at the table, we also want our healthcare, our mental health care partners to be at the table too. Because they are hard to serve, we need to get them the services. Housing First works. There is great outcomes that come with getting people into stable housing first, but we need our partners. Landlords need to help us. We need to get people into housing. So as we progress and we're doing a lot better with our data, we're looking at how can we sustain a continued reduction over time. These are the progress marks that happen. But some of this had to happen because, the urgency's there. Our people need help and we need to bring more partners to the table. So it's important to note that it's just not the winter time that we're doing this. It's all year round. And we also have to look at, what are these innovative best practices that we come. Elliot, you always talk about this day shelter, but we've also seen progress since then too.
Okay, other topics, Mark?
Mayor, on the Board of Freeholders, 2 questions. First, any progress in reaching agreement with the Board of Aldermen committee on that, or with anybody else over there? And then, if not, what do you think the chances are that board will start meeting Monday without city people, and what do you think of that?
So as you know, we nominated 9 people to the Freeholders Board. The Board of Aldermen has not taken any action on that. They haven't accepted or rejected any of those 9 members. Of course, we have been in conversations specifically with 3 aldermen who don't like some of our nominees and like others, want to insert others. But this takes the action of the full Board of Aldermen, and so I'm hopeful that the Board of Aldermen will take action and determine, hopefully confirm all of our nominees, but if not, let whoever they do confirm, then we'll have to appoint additional folks.
Okay, but if they...
And will they meet on Monday? I don't know the answer to that. According to the state constitution, the Board of Freeholders is supposed to meet within the second Monday after the 30 days expire. So that happens to be Monday, November 4th.
At this moment, what do you think the chances are they will meet without any city representation?
I'm not in the business of placing bets.
Okay.
Emily?
Mayor, the more details came out about the MLS overnight. Can you share the city's involvement in helping to get a land deal and stadium deal done? What's been happening in some of the discussions that have been going on?
So we've been working with the ownership group over the past year, and certainly I'm very excited about the announcement this morning. First of all, the location of the new soccer stadium will be just north of Market, so between Olive and Market. But in addition to that, and this is something I think we didn't know for sure until this morning, having all the practice fields, the office building, the parking, all will be located on the south side of Market. And so that's very exciting to have the entire operation located right here in downtown. And of course, we're working with the ownership group, we're working with MoDOT, and all the players that have to come together to make this happen. But good news this morning.
Can you explain why it's important for the city to buy the land and then it sounds like maybe the ownership group will then purchase it from you, or why is that being done in that way?
I think it has to do with MoDOT's preference and easier for us to go in and hopefully get the land purchased with the opportunity then for the ownership group plans to own the land and own the stadium. So this is a pretty common practice for us to do. And it's not the city, it's LCRAH, but they're a related arm.
And will the city maintain any other property ownership? Will the ownership group will take over all the property?
Yeah,
that's
exactly, yes.
purchased?
What about that remaining piece of the funding, the Port Authority thing that wasn't passed? Like, are you going to be submitting that again, or are you going to go with another route?
So we don't know the final answer to that. We need to work that out before March of 2022 when the stadium opens. The first game is played.
Do you know why the choice was made not to share it publicly with everyone about some of the deals behind the scenes of the purchasing of the land and all of that? We haven't heard of it from anyone else before now.
You mean until the Post
Sure.
Published it this morning? I don't know. The ownership group gave that story to the Post, I guess. So.
Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask regarding the $5 million that the Board of Aldermen had approved for Cure Violence. Is that money at all going to be put up for a bid process? It was my understanding that the city would have to, they're not allowed to just implement that towards one program.
So with regard to Cure Violence, there's $500,000, which was a contract issued for implementing cure violence through the comptroller's emergency powers. Then there's $1.5 million, which is out for an RFP process right now. That's the second tranche. And then there's the $5 million, which is to be spent over 3 years. But the thinking is that the first 500 and the $1.5 million, that will be spent first. And it does require an RFP process.
How long before we start seeing results from cure violence, before we start seeing what Louis Reed has predicted will be a dramatic drop in homicides? How long before all that happens?
Well, this is a pretty complex process. Cure Violence is a consultant. Then an entity, and they have not been identified yet, will actually manage the problem and and hire the interrupters. And so we're in the process of determining who that entity might be. It would likely be a social service agency of some type. And then, there's training. This won't be up and running until sometime after the first of the year, I would say. So we have a little bit of time. That's from the Cure Violence people themselves. It takes 60, 90 days for them to come up to speed.
Mayor, I have one last quick question on the cold weather shelter plan. What led the city to make the decision to invest the $500,000 this year for supplies and some of those permanent beds? It's been a complaint from the outreach community for a few years. You're relying on us to do this all as volunteers. What finally led you guys this year to say, you know what, yeah, we're going to put some of the city's treasure into this?
We appreciate our volunteers very much, and we're still going to need them. So this is not a replacement to that. But essentially, we're trying to do as much as possible in order to get people off the streets because we believe it's safer. I mean, you notice that we've said it's going to be open every day, December, January, and February, and rather than use the temperature guideline, which was a little confusing. And so on these shoulder months, November and March, we'll use 32 degrees as the temperature versus 20 to 25.
Okay, everyone, thanks for coming today. I have press releases for everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. See you all.
Irene, are you able to?
You can grab it. Sorry.